The NFL is off to the races, and we are almost a quarter of the way through the season already. Heading into week 4, you won't want to miss my top 5 weekly waiver wire targets to help you bring home your fantasy football league's championship. What is up, y'all? This is Dr. Derek Bennett, aka Professor Lox, coming to you as always for the weekly waiver wire show and injury updates from this past NFL season week throughout the season. It's absolutely crazy that we're heading into week 4 already. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like just yesterday we were waiting for that NFL kickoff with the Eagles and the Cowboys, and we're already heading into week 4. We're talking waivers. I'm going to be talking a little bit of an injury update for those guys that are definitely fantasy relevant that got injured earlier today. So, as always, we're going to be talking about waiver wires. I got my top 5 guys that I think will definitely benefit you, if not this coming week, could potentially benefit you a little bit more long term. We have a couple guys that have started to earn their stripes, started to hit their stride a little bit, might not necessarily be at the top of the depth chart right now, but over the next couple of weeks, watch out. These guys are coming. So we're going to be talking about my top 5 waiver wire targets, like I said, and then we'll be going through my early takes of the injuries that happened in week 3. On the offensive side of the ball, we have 5 or 6 guys that, if they weren't on your fantasy lineups, they are definitely some fantasy notable guys, a couple of which are going to be missing some big time playing time. They're going to be out for a little while here. So you're going to want to stick around for that. But heading into week 4, this season's been kind of interesting. We finally started to see the injury bug tick up a little bit. Last week, it seemed like quarterbacks were dropping like flies, and you may have had to add either a Mac Jones or a Jake Browning to fill in. Wide receivers and a couple running backs went down today. So that's going to be my focus in this week 4 waiver wire targets are more the skill position guys. No quarterbacks made the list in this week, but we have a couple running backs, a couple wide receivers, a tight end, and as always, I'll throw out one defense special teams combo that I think has a pretty good matchup and has been playing pretty well up to this point heading into week 4. So without further ado, let's get rocking and rolling with my top 5 waiver stashes heading into week 4. And the first guy that I want to talk about is a guy that, like I said, isn't necessarily the lead back for this team, but he's been getting a lot more targets and carries as of late, and that's one Blake Corum. Blake Corum is a guy coming out of Michigan, was the every down back for Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines for a few years there. And going into the season, Kyren Williams obviously is the lead back there in LA, but every week he's been getting a little bit more run. He's been getting a little bit more carries. This past week against the Eagles, he had 8 carries for 53 yards. The week before, he had 5 for 44 and a touchdown. Kyren Williams, although he's a great back, he's one that doesn't necessarily make those boom type plays, those really electric, big time runs. A lot of times he's 3-4 yards in a cloud of dust type of a running back. He might seem to fit Jim Harbaugh's system out there in LA. He probably would get a little bit more run with them than he does in this LA Rams offense. So Blake Corum is slowly getting more run. He's getting into the offense a little bit more. And I would not be surprised if this turns into a 50-50 split a couple weeks down the line. And eventually Blake Corum takes over that role as the lead back for the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams offense has been fairly balanced to this point with that dynamic wide receiver duo with Devontae Adams and obviously Puka Nacua. Matthew Stafford has been completely healthy up to this point, and that offense is rolling. They lost a heartbreaker, I'll say, today in Philly, but that offense I think would go a lot better if they had a little bit more of uh, an explosive type of a running back in that offense, and really I think Blake Corum might be that guy as kind of compared to Kyron Williams. So Blake Corum is the first of my waiver wire stashes this week. The next one, let's talk about another running back that to me might not necessarily be a guy that will eventually take over the lead back role, but he's a guy that just seems to get carries week to week. And if for whatever reason the number one running back does go down, he's a guy that can definitely fill in that role and really still be a pretty darn good lead back. And that's Tyler Allgeier down in hot Atlanta with the Falcons. Tyler Allgeier over the last couple of weeks has been getting a lot of carries. Week 1, he had 10 carries. Week 2, he had 16 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. This past week against the Carolina Panthers, the game script just kind of got out of hand, and whether it was Bijan Robinson or Tyler Allgeier, they just weren't running the ball a whole lot. You can't run the ball a ton when you're down 24, 30 points to a Carolina Panthers team that typically is pretty bad at the end of the day against the run. But the game script just didn't call for Tyler Allgeier much today. So Tyler Allgeier is a guy that I don't necessarily mind picking up because, like I said, he does get a lot of carries for a backup running back. And when he does get the ball, a lot of times he does something with it. And again, if Bijan Robinson were ever to go down, he's a guy that would definitely be able to take the ball and run with it figuratively and literally. And I don't think the Atlanta Falcons would really miss much of a beat with Tyler Allgeier. So in terms of running backs, we got Tyler Allgeier, Blake Corum. Let's switch over to the wide receiver room, and we have a guy that had an absolutely massive game today. Today against the Commanders, this guy only had 3 touchdowns on with 8 catches and 145 yards, and that was Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker, again, seems to be earning his stripes and now is really their third option when it comes to getting the ball. You still have, obviously, Bowers there in Vegas, and obviously Jacoby Myers as well. But Geno seems to trust this guy in Trey Tucker. And again, he had an absolutely massive game today with 3 touchdowns. Obviously, his fantasy football production is probably going to be a little bit of an outlier. We don't have too many 40-point games by anybody, let alone a third wide receiver or a third target type of a guy. But this Las Vegas Raiders team, to my surprise, is keeping things at least pretty balanced, if not really allowing Geno to step back and throw the ball all over the field. So again, this is back-to-back weeks with at least 8 targets, and it just seems to be developing into a great third option for Geno Smith and that Las Vegas offense. So Trey Tucker is my first wide receiver going into week 4 that you might want to grab, might want to stash on your fantasy football lineups. The other one is a guy that is a rookie wide receiver down there in Tennessee, and that's Elic Ibeneme. And I misspelled that on my graphic. It's ELIC, Elic Ibeneme. Alec, he's been a dog coming out of the 4th round from Stanford. He's gotten a pretty good run over the last couple of weeks Each week that he's played, Cam Ward has targeted him at least 5 times, and he only had 5 targets today, but he's averaged 6 targets a game, has scored a touchdown in each of the last 2 games. So he's a guy that, especially in that Tennessee Titans offense, where outside of Calvin Ridley, they don't have a primary uh, guy. You have Chig there at the tight end position, not one of the premier tight ends in the league, and you really don't have a wide receiver too. And Elic Ibeneme is just catching his stride, and Cam Ward has to throw it to somebody. So this is another offense that, to me, I would have expected to see a little bit more Tony Pollard in that run game. But just game script wise, the Titans are probably going to be trailing in a lot of games this season. And that means that Cam Ward is going to have to step back and toss the ball all over the yard. So going into this week, you got a Houston Texans team that, their secondary, their defense as a whole is pretty darn good. But Derek Stingley will probably follow Ridley all over the field, which might lead Elic Ibeneme to have a pretty good day next week over there in Houston. So we got 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. The last person that I want to talk about today hasn't stepped on the field once this NFL season. He's a tight end, and he's a guy that you probably know his name, and that's Isaiah Likely. Isaiah Likely has missed the first 2 weeks following offseason foot surgery. Tomorrow night, there's a potential in the Monday Night Football game that he could suit up and go. He had a few limited practices this past week. I don't expect him to play in week 3, but I do expect him back on the field in week 4. The problem with this is I don't necessarily know if I fully trust him the first week or 2 that I have him back, or the Ravens have him back. At the same time, Mark Andrews hasn't done hardly anything this season so far. I think he has 2 catches through the first 2 weeks for 7 yards on only 4 targets, which is pretty surprising knowing Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson's history. Lamar Jackson's a guy that likes to go to the tight end quite often, and he just hasn't been doing that to this point. So whether it's just a lack of faith in Mark Andrews, maybe Mark Andrews is a little beat up. He's not a young chicken at this point, so he might have just lost a step, and that offense is going through D-Hop and Zay Flowers and obviously King Henry. But I think Isaiah Likely does provide a little bit of a spark for that Ravens offense as a whole. And Isaiah Likely is a guy that is available, I think, in like 72, 73% of leagues. Once he gets on the field, I expect him to do something pretty quickly, and just the name alone will have people trying to add him to the roster. So before he gets on the field, I would try to stash Isaiah Likely on your rosters sooner rather than later, which means, like I said, he's probably going to probably not going to go in week 3 Monday Night Football. He's probably going to step on the field in week 4. So if you have the opportunity to add him before Monday Night Football, before waivers actually picks up, this is a guy that you might want to stash ahead of time, just because, like I said, he does have a name. Last season, he opened the season with a couple touchdowns in week 1, and got a lot of draw last year. So Isaiah Likely is a guy you'll probably want to stash sooner rather than later, but definitely could be a benefit to that already pretty explosive Baltimore Ravens offense. And before we start talking injuries, like always, I do try to throw out a defense that I think is a good play going into the next week, because just like I do, I know a handful of you might just be searching the waiver wires, looking at good matchups, or trying to snag a pretty good defense week to week. And in this week's, or going into week 4, it was pretty hard. Some of the top defenses were playing some of the top offenses, and I ended up going with one of those teams. This is they're going against the team that, surprisingly to me, has had one hell of an offense to this point. But that's the LA Rams. And that Rams defense has played pretty darn well to this point. I think they're a top 10 defense so far through 3 weeks. The problem is they're going up against an Indianapolis Colts team that has been one of the most explosive offenses and consistent offenses so far through 3 weeks. Now, Indy's 3-0. The Rams are 2-1. This will be played in LA. And at the end of the day, I think it's one of those things where until Daniel Jones shows us that he's not going to be Josh Allen, we have to continue to think that he's going to continue to play well. On the other hand, the Rams just held the Eagles and their offense to a pretty bad appearance this past week. The Rams held the Eagles to, I guess, 27 points. We know what happened towards the end of that game with the blocked field goal and the Eagles returning that for a touchdown. But Jalen Hurts only had 226 yards in that game. Saquon Barkley was held to minimal yardage. I think he only averaged like 1.8 yards a carry. It was under 2. Held Barkley to 46, I guess under 3 yards per carry, but held him to 46 yards, which is outrageous, especially when they gave up 200 yards plus both times they saw him last year. But the LA Rams defense is looking pretty darn good. I know the Colts offense is really humming to this point, but I think they are going to run into a little bit of a buzzsaw this coming week against the Rams in LA. So that is it in terms of waiver wire targets. Just as a quick review, I have Tyler Allgeier going up against the Commanders. Again, just more of a stash play. This is a guy that they do like to get into the game and get him some carries basically every week if the game script allows for it. Unlike this week, Blake Corum is a running back that's just slowly getting a little bit more run, getting more carries each week, and potentially has the opportunity to take over the lead back role from Kyron Williams. Trey Tucker had one hell of a game this past week and has consistently gotten targets over the last couple of weeks. So Trey Tucker going up against the Bears this coming week. Elic I've been butchering his last name the entire show here, but Elic Ibeneme, the wide receiver for Tennessee, going up against the Houston Texans. This is a guy that's averaging 6 targets a game, has had touchdowns in each of the last 2 weeks. And then finally, Isaiah Likely, the tight end for the Baltimore Ravens, going up against the Chiefs this coming week, is not or hasn't played a snap in the 2025 NFL season, but once he gets on the field, I think he will be a little bit of a spark for that Ravens passing game, not like they really need it. And then finally, I do like the Rams defense and special teams as a unit that has been playing pretty well to this point, and I think they will be the buzzsaw of a defense that will finally slow down that Indianapolis Colts offense. Now, this past week, week 3, we had a number of key guys go down with some pretty major injuries, a couple of them pretty gruesome at the same time. So I have 5 guys here that, like I said, are probably in or on your rosters, 4 of which are probably starting for your fantasy teams. The first one being CeeDee Lamb for the Dallas Cowboys. Pretty early in that game, CeeDee Lamb went down with an ankle injury, tried to come back a couple plays later, and he kind of limped off the field. With CeeDee Lamb, he most likely has a high ankle sprain, which when it comes to ankle sprains, high ankle sprains are a little bit more gruesome. They need a little bit more force in order to sprain the ligament that's kind of between the 2 bones of your shin down there towards your ankle. With high ankle sprains, these are injuries that typically guys are out anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the severity. Luckily for CeeDee Lamb, like I said, he did try to go back in the game. was not able to continue, but he did walk off on his own power. Didn't necessarily need anybody to help him back into the locker room. I think this is a pretty mild case for CeeDee Lamb. So my guess is he'll probably miss 2 to 3 weeks with this mild high ankle sprain. So you will be wanting to look for other options for CeeDee Lamb. I don't expect him to play at least next week, probably the week after that, and potentially week 3. But I would expect this to be a 2 to 3 week injury for CeeDee Lamb. The next one is Najee Harris, a guy that was actually getting some more carries this week after the fireworks incident over the 4th of July, where it impaired his vision a little bit, had a little bit of an eye issue going through training camp, and even hindered him a little bit in week 1 in terms of just overall volume of carries. Najee Harris ruptured his Achilles. He completely ruptured his Achilles. He's done for the rest of the year. This is a guy that we'll see how he's looking, come May, June, July, to potentially look at adding him for next year. But Omarion Hampton has shown that he is very capable running back in that Chargers offense. So we'll see what the Chargers end up doing with Najee Harris come next year. But with that ruptured Achilles, there is no doubt in my mind that is what the injury is, and that he will miss the rest of this NFL season. Let's stay in the running back room. And for the Arizona Cardinals, James Conner went down with a pretty gruesome lower leg injury. It was pretty rough to watch the video of it. And James Conner is one of those guys that he's tough as nails. I think he's in his 9th NFL season, coming out of Pitt, my alma mater. I absolutely love me some James Conner, but the injury itself looked pretty gruesome. Not entirely sure what is going on with his, I'll just say lower leg. Could be ankle. There could be some knee stuff. I mean, it looked like he completely broke the lower part of his leg. So he's going to miss some significant time. I don't know exactly how much he could potentially be done for the season. It's hard to say. We should know more within the next day or two regarding James Conner and that lower leg injury. But for now, I'm just going to say he's going to miss significant time. You're going to want to find another option to fill in for James Conner. Most likely, he's going to miss at least 6 to 8 weeks. If not, like I said, potentially the rest of the season. Just depends on exactly what's going on in that lower leg. Is it a bone? Is it a ligament? Is it both? What is there any neurovascular nerves and arteries and veins kind of things going on? It's just hard to say without some further imaging. But James Conner will miss some significant time. A couple of wide receivers that went down with some more soft tissue related injuries. Mike Evans was ruled out with a hamstring injury. Hamstring injuries as a whole, especially for wide receivers, running backs, defensive backs, are really, really hard to come back from within the season. Now, it all depends on severity, how long these guys will be out. Typically, this is anything from 1 week to 4, 5, 6 weeks. With a mild hamstring strain, these guys are probably going to miss at least 1 week, potentially 2. Hamstring injuries usually feel better a few days later, and you're not necessarily the hamstring itself hasn't necessarily fully healed. It just starts to feel better because you're not running, you're not jumping, you're not doing any explosive types of movements. At the same time, as soon as you try to, that pain returns pretty quickly if that hamstring hasn't been provided the amount of time needed to fully heal. So with Mike Evans, we'll see in terms of severity how bad his hamstring injury is. With him being ruled out in the middle of the game, it's telling me that it's fairly significant. So my guess with Mike Evans is probably 2 to 4 weeks out. So again, this is a guy that you'll want to find another option over the next couple of weeks at least regarding this hamstring injury. Terry McLaurin, on the other hand, switching to the front side of the leg, had a quad injury that held him out of the rest of the game for the Washington Commanders. They switched over to to Debo and continued to put up a lot of points in that game. But Terry McLaurin with a quad injury, again, it kind of depends on severity. Luckily for him, they never truly ruled him out of returning in the game. They just marked him as questionable, which to me I think is good news. Most likely this is a pretty mild quad strain. So with the quad strains, again, it's fairly similar to hamstring injuries, maybe not necessarily as I guess we don't necessarily see athletes re-injure quad strains quite like we do with hamstring strains. Hamstring strains, like I said, are really hard to come back from, just because if they're not fully healed up, if we try to add too much load or too much volume, too much intensity too quickly, those things pop and we're kind of back to square one. Quad strains, not quite like that. They're fairly similar, but with Terry McLaurin, he could potentially go this upcoming week. It just kind of depends on severity, how symptomatic it is. My guess is he'll probably miss the next week. Could miss 2 or 3 weeks, but my guess is he'll miss one and be back. But Terry McLaurin, this is another one that we'll just have to kind of watch through the news over the next couple of weeks and see what is coming out of that Commanders camp regarding Terry McLaurin and his status, going into week 4, week 5, and so forth. But again, just some quick injury news. CeeDee Lamb, high ankle sprain, probably out at least 2 to 3 weeks, if not more than that. Najee Harris ruptured his Achilles. He's done for the year. James Conner with the lower leg injury. Don't exactly know what's going on there, but we'll miss some significant time. Mike Evans with a hamstring injury and Terry McLaurin with a quad strain. Both of those are more soft tissue related. It's hard to come back from quad strains and hamstring strains, especially hamstrings, just because of re-injury risk. But my guess is Mike Evans probably missed 2 to 3 weeks. Terry McLaurin, maybe 1. But again, we just have to kind of see what is coming out of both Tampa Bay and Washington with those guys. But that is it for this week 4 waiver wire and injury rundown report. But here at IDP Plus, we are giving you all kinds of information regarding offensive fantasy information, but obviously we've really focused in on defensive players and IDP related fantasy information. So tune in to all of the shows over here at IDP Plus to get up-to-date content regarding some of your favorite players that you probably have on your fantasy lineup. I'm also over on the Daily Fantasy Statement Games channel at DFSG Plus, giving out weekly college football picks, NFL picks, some NFL props as well. So check us out over there at DFSG Plus. As always, if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, follow, tell a friend, tell a coworker what we're doing here over here at IDP Plus. We greatly appreciate it. Tell me down in the comments who you're looking to grab on waivers this week, or if there's somebody that you just want to know a little bit more about, whether it's injury related or just guys that you're looking to potentially add. Let me know. I try to respond to comments within the next day or so. So drop a comment down there. And like I said, as always, like, follow, subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Until next week, here at IDP Plus, I am Dr. Derek Bennett, aka Professor Lox. I am getting out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.